Honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yahushua HaMashiach this day, and we will go at John 5:39. John 5:39. It says, "Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men." Sit down. Sit down. "But I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that come from Elohim only?" So with that being said, let's go back to Exodus chapter 33. And about 10.
He's right behind you.
Well, we'll pick it up at about verse 7 to a point that we were discussing in Exodus 33. It says, "And Moses took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, afar off from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. And it came to pass that every one which sought Yahuwah went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp." So the reason we're going to come back and look at this is from a different aspect, because we know that the word sought was bakash. So everyone who sought to sacrifice themselves to get into the house went outside the camp into the house of the body, because congregation is just assembly, and all that's just going to do is take us back to the body. So we know from John chapter 2, but I guess we'll sit back and look at it just for clarity's sake to get a little bit of understanding on something. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go to Isaiah chapter 66 and 1. And then after that, we'll go to John chapter 2 and verse probably about 13. And after John chapter 2 at about verse 13, we'll take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 5. And from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, we will go to Revelation chapter 21. So we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 1 and then sit down. We're going to go to John chapter 2. And then from John chapter 2, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, and then the Revelation chapter 21. That goes for you too, boy. Don't come in here with all that. You want to play, go in your room. "Thus saith Yahuwah, Shamahim is my throne, and the rats is my footstool. Where is the house that ye build unto me? And where is the place of my rest?" Now we know a lot of people love to use the verse to say, why are you going to a physical location? You don't need to go to no physical location, and all this other ignorant stuff that people be saying out their mouth. But now that I think about it, don't come in here with that. You're either going to be quiet or you're going to go in your room. Now sit there and be quiet. If I have to speak again, I'm going to strike one of you. Then okay, then I don't want to strike you either. So don't test me. 2 Chronicles chapter 6. This ain't y'all first rodeo. Y'all know how this works. My apologies. That's 1 Chronicles chapter 6. It actually might be 2 Chronicles. I actually might be tripping. And I am tripping. 2 Chronicles chapter 6. Do I want 6? I think I want 6. Let me make sure what verse it is that we require. Okay, I'm trying to recall the verses in my head. I'm trying to recall where it be. Let's look at 2 Chronicles chapter 7. My apologies, in verse 1. 2 Chronicles, but I don't think that's what I'm looking at. That's what I want. Ah, there we go. It is 2 Chronicles chapter 6. My apologies, everyone. We'll pick it up at about verse 16. This will make sense when we go to talking about grace and why we're taking this track. So bear with me. So it says, "Now therefore you," this is 2 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse 16. "Now therefore, O Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharal, keep with thy servant David, my father, that which..." which thou hast promised him, saying, there shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit upon the throne of Yasharal. Yet so that the children take heed to their way to walk in my Torah, as thou hast walked before me. Now then, O Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharal, let thy word be verified, which thou hast spoken unto thy servant David. But will Elohim in very deed dwell with men on the Arats? Behold, Shamahim and Shamahims cannot contain thee. How much less this house which I have built? Now, he just stated that he already know that the heaven of heavens cannot contain Yahuwah. So how much more could this house contain him? So this is why we can see the statement being made in Isaiah by Yahuwah saying that he doesn't dwell in temples made with hands. We had already looked at on Wednesday that he said that if you separate yourself, that he will walk in you and you will walk in him, and he will be your Elohim and you will be his people. Because his desire was never to dwell in a physical building made with hands, but to dwell in men. So let's look in John chapter 2 and about verse 13. The reason why we sitting back looking at this here and what we're going to be working to and looking at in the law with grace is that grace is a matter of acceptance. That's what we get into, that it's a matter of acceptance. This is Yahuwah accepting something, accepting someone. See, a lot of people look at grace and they kind of flaunt it versus looking at what it is. It's a receiving of something. So then what we'll be examining is quiet. What we'll be examining is that does the law cause you to be accepted, or does grace cause you to be accepted? And if grace causes you to be accepted, what had to be offered in order for you to be accepted? Because the law was given unto you. So you were already accepted before the law was given unto you. See, this is what people overlook when it comes to that particular matter. John chapter 2, verse 13. We'll drop down a little bit to about verse 17. Well, we'll read 13. Ain't gonna hurt nothing. The Yahudim's Passover was at hand, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem, and he found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the changers of money sitting. You know, all of us have probably overlooked that particular point when looking at this John chapter 2 verse 13. That when the master get ready to beat these men in the temple, it was Passover. If we was to actually examine the law, which we're about to do, them selling stuff in the temple during this time is egregious, grievous, and egregious violation. Now I want y'all to keep in mind that we still have 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and Revelation 21 in the clip. But we're going to pause and we're going to look at something in Deuteronomy 14 of what's supposed to actually be done during these feast days, so you can understand the law and understand why Yahushua was irked in the manner that he was irked, to the point that he would whip these people for even selling this stuff in there. Because yes, this stuff is mentioned in the book of Jeremiah, in the 7th chapter to be specific, about them not turning his father's house into a den of thieves. But we actually want to turn around and we want to look at the certain things that were supposed to be done during these feast days. It's going to mention the tithe of the corn, but it's all the same. 14 and 21. Deuteronomy 14 and 21. Deuteronomy 14 and 21. And I'll probably pull the other one for the feast day while I'm at it. Yeah, and get you Deuteronomy chapter 12 also. About verse 18. But they're going to pretty much say the same thing, so it ain't going to make a difference. He said, you shall not eat of anything that die of itself. Thou shalt give it unto the stranger that is in thy gates, that he may eat it. Or thou mayst sell it unto an alien. For thou art Kadesh people unto Yahuwah Elohim. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. So y'all can understand, if there was a cow and he died, you cannot eat that cow's meat. Nor can you sell that cow's meat or that cow to another Hebrew. But you can sell him to a stranger. So you can understand what that means. You can do that. If you have some livestock and he died on its own, you can't eat it and you can't sell it to another brew. But to a stranger, he's fair game. He said, thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed that the field bring forth year by year. Thou shalt eat before Yahuwah thy Elohim in the place which he shall choose to place his name there. The tithe of the corn, of the wine, and of thy oil, and the firstlings of thy herd, and of thy flocks, that thou may learn to fear Yahuwah thy Elohim always. And if thy way be too long for thee, so thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which Yahuwah thy Elohim shall choose to set his name there, when Yahuwah thy Elohim have baruched thee, thou shalt turn it into money, and bind up the money in thy hand, and thou shalt go into the place which Yahuwah thy Elohim choose, and thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lust after, for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, or for strong drink, or for whatsoever thy soul desire, and thou shalt eat there before Yahuwah thy Elohim, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thy household. And the Levite that was within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he have no part nor inheritance with thee. At the end of 3 years thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and thou shalt lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he have no part nor inheritance with thee, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow, which are within thy gate, shall come and shall eat and be satisfied, that Yahuwah thy Elohim may baruch thee in all the work of thy hand, which thou do. Now the reason why this was such a horrible thing, come over here, you can come on around here to Deuteronomy 16, which is better. And we'll pick it up at about verse 10, because this same sacrifices pertain to this. It's all the same. The reason why this is a bad thing, when you look at these feast days were, even with the tithes and the bringing that at a set times and all this here, these were not a time to be trying to benefit off the people, because it was a time to be rejoicing before your Elohim, not to get your rocks off, much less to get your rocks off in the temple. Nevertheless, Deuteronomy 16 and 9, it ain't gonna hurt. 7 weeks shalt thou number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou begin to put the sickle to the corn. Thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, with the tribute of a freewill offering of thy hand, which thou shalt give unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, according as Yahuwah thy Elohim have baruched thee. Thou shalt rejoice before Yahuwah thy Elohim, thou and thy son, and thy daughter, and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite that is within thy gates, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow, that are among you in the place which Yahuwah thy Elohim have chosen to place his name there. Thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in Mizraim, and thou shalt observe and do these statutes. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine. Thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant, and thy maidservant, and the Levite, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto Yahuwah thy Elohim in the place which Yahuwah shall choose, because Yahuwah thy Elohim shall baruch thee in all thy increase and all the work of thy hands. Therefore thou shalt rejoice. 3 times a year shall thy males appear before Yahuwah thy Elohim in the place which Yahuwah shall choose. In the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, in the feast of tabernacles, they shall not appear before Yahuwah empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Yahuwah the Elohim which he hath given thee. So notice when he sit back and he talk about these feasts, that you should rejoice and you should look out for the fatherless, the widow, and the stranger that is within your gates, which is within the place where you dwell. Now we know in James chapter 1, he tell you pure religion undefiled is a man who's able to bridle his tongue to keep himself unspotted by the world, and to visit the widow and the fatherless in their affliction. Now we come back to John chapter 2. We can see that with these feast days going on, that all these men are thinking about is how they can gain and profit for themselves. The point of where we looked at what was actually supposed to be going on with these feast days, and what you were supposed to bring up when you came up, whether looking in Deuteronomy 14 or Deuteronomy 16 or even Deuteronomy 12, which was stating the same thing, is that we see that these feast days had 2 intents. Matter of fact, since I said that, come to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. One intent was obviously, was to rejoice before Yahuwah. The second intent was to look out for those who didn't have anything, which are the Levites, the strangers, the fatherless, and the widow. And not to be self-serving and seeking to be able to come up off of the people at a time when you knew everybody was going to be there. Nevertheless, 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Where do we want to begin? We'll pick verse 8. I speak not by commandment, but by occasion of the forwardness of others, and to prove the sincerity of your love. For you know the favor of or the acceptance of our Master Yahushua HaMashiach, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that ye through his poverty might be made rich. And herein I give my advice, for this is expedient for you who have begun before, not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. Now therefore perform the doing of it, that there was a readiness to will, so there may be performance also out of that which ye have. For if there be at first a willing mind, it is accepted according to that man a man have, and not according to he that have not. For I mean that other men be eased and ye be burdened. But by equality, now that that this time your abundance may be a supply for their want, that their abundance also may be a supply for your want, that there may be equality. As it is written, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. Now what is he referencing? He is referencing the gathering of the manna in this verse 15. What is he trying to tell you? It's the very exact same thing what the law just stated, what you read in Deuteronomy 12 and Deuteronomy 14 and Deuteronomy 16. He said to give to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow out of what Yahuwah has blessed you with. And that he that had a large blessing is not going to have any less than the person who had nothing by distributing to him. And therefore you have this equality. Because he first said there must be a willing mind, as it is according to a man have, and not according to that who have not. See, a lot of individuals, they sit back and they look at. See, come over here to chapter 9 and about verse 4. See, a lot of people sit back and look at it, they feel like they shouldn't give because they have this, or they're not giving because they want to do it. See, because look at he said, he mean not that other men be eased and you be burdened. So, and this is what the law was actually telling you, to give as you have been blessed. Not that it was a burden upon you to give because you had more and this person had less. Because a lot of people sit back and they seen that they don't want to distribute and do anything for people, because they don't feel like that they doing more than the next person. But let's just look at what Paul stated. Even though our law is instructing to look out for the fathers, the stranger, and the widow, because you knew they had less, and the Levite, because you knew they had less, and you who had Baruch thee throughout the whole entire year, that you might have this excess increase in order to impart this unto them. Now, the reason why I'm looking at this here, we going through this here, because I told y'all on Wednesday, I had a discussion with a dude about, Paul's letters of this and that, and then the third. But then you see, if you actually know the law and you know the prophets, then you know why he was saying what he's saying. Because what he's saying right here is what the law say, as we clearly just look. Matter of fact, another popped in my mind. I got to remember where it's at. About what he told you about the poor being with you always, because the poor is always going to be in the land. The law tells you this. So before we read chapter 9, I think it's Deuteronomy that I want. Swing back to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 15. Deuteronomy 15. That's what I want. Deuteronomy 15 and 3. Because yes, we still, even though we've taken an unorthodox trip than what I had initially stated and had in my mind to go through the law, y'all willing, we still will make it verse 4. We still gonna go through the whole entire law regardless. Listen what I tell you. Say when there shall be no poor among you, for Yahuwah shall greatly Baruch thee in the land which Yahuwah the Elohim give thee for an inheritance to possess it. Only if thou carefully hearken unto the voice of Yahuwah thy Elohim, to observe to do all these commandments which I command you this day. I didn't want to see what the word in Hebrew is for carefully hearken. And not just with the part of dealing with the matter what he talking about. Because we all need to make sure that we carefully hearken to this man's words. When we look at, and you know what it is, both words for hearken, and it's the Shema. That's to hear with the intent to obey. If we hear with the ear of faith, as we know, as we've been learning, and praise Yah for Yahushua for it, we see that the instruction of faith is completely and entirely all throughout the text, and specifically in the law, and men overlook it. And now we can probably get a better understanding of what Paul meant when he said not serving by the letter of the law, but by the Spirit, because the Spirit is of faith. See, and I didn't tell this gentleman that when I was having a conversation with him. The reason why faith trumps the law is all of us should know this. That you cannot receive the Ruach HaKodesh by keeping of the law. It's only received by the hearing of faith. Men wonder why they don't have any power with Elohim. They wonder why they don't have the riches of Elohim, because they're seeking the righteousness of Elohim by something that was given versus something that is heard and believed, which is accepted, of which no man can give unto you. Because a heart of faith can only be given to you from Yahuwah. We've already examined this in times past in the text. He has to open your heart up to faith. This is something that men's heart are not open to because their hearts are hard. Because in actuality, they want to boast in their flesh and boast in the law versus boasting in Yahuwah. Because they think in boasting in the law, you boasting in Yahuwah. But in actuality, you're just boasting in your own righteousness that you feel that you have examined. This is what got Job in trouble and what got him rebuked in the book of Job, if you pay attention to that. That's what got him in trouble. That's when he said, I repent in dust and ashes. Because he seen he was boasting in his works in the law. This is where this stuff come from. It's right there. And you know we're going to look at it. That's what they were getting. He wasn't boasting in Yahuwah. He was boasting in himself. But these men are so skillful and so knowledgeable of the text. Why do they not know these things and able to impart this unto the people that they may be set free? And we talking about being set free from death and set free from sin. That's what we should be doing this for. Are we doing this just because we know we Israel? As some brothers ask, if you found out you weren't Israel, would you stop serving Yah at that point? You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, when is Yahuwah going to get the praise and the boasting and the works and in the conversation? I had a gentleman today, brother tagged me in that movie Color of the Cross. He shared the video of Color of the Cross. It's basically a story of Hamashiach and the man black. I seen it about 5 years ago in the barbershop. Mr. Taylor was playing it in the barbershop. And that's why I saw that. You know what I'm saying? And somebody asked who a mutual, a friend of his. I wouldn't say he was my friend. I know the gentleman. He asked what it was about. I told him what it was about. This nigga come at me talking about, do you believe the earth is flat around? I'm like, nigga, what? Why did you ask me that? What was the purpose of that question? What did this question have anything to do with this movie's about the suffering of Yahushua at Passover? So when I tell this gentleman, I'm not finna go, man, go argue with somebody else. I'm not finna entertain you. You don't care for the truth. And that's when I told him the thing that we've been looking at. What truth means amat, and that's firmness and faithfulness. So having a love for the truth is having a love of faith, which means that's having a love to trust your Elohim. So nigga, do you have a love for the truth, nigga? You know what I'm talking about? Let's stop taking truth according to Yahuwah and making it meaning truth, meaning absolute fact of information. When we know truth for us means faith. Period. That's how we need to start training our mind. That's why when I mentioned that Wednesday, when he said, if you say you keep his commandments, then the truth is not in you. Faith cannot be in you if you say you know this man and you don't do what he say. Ain't no way you believe in this man. Because if you believed in him, you'd live by that faith. You would live by that. You understand? In 2 Kings chapter 17, it tell you that everybody transgressed because they didn't believe in Yahuwah the Elohim. Psalms tell you that they didn't trust nor hope in his salvation. They weren't steadfast in his covenant because they didn't believe in him. They didn't trust in him. Their hope did not rest in the name of Yahuwah. Didn't rest in it. So now we got to turn from transitioning. We don't want to be the cursed children, bastard children. Only bastard children don't trust their father. Because a true child is going to trust their father. He told you in Proverbs, son, take heed unto me, I give you good doctrine. This man is giving you everything you need to be able to trust him. He said, I'm Yahuwah Elohim, I lead thee in the way that you should go, and the things that I teach are for thy profit. I teach right things. This is what he told you. So you can trust him. What has Yahuwah done to any one of us to where we cannot trust him? But you know what people like to do? They like to blame the machinations and crooked dealings of men and put that on Yahuwah. Don't put that on him. Yahuwah has not failed anyone who trusted in him. If you feel like Yahuwah failed you, it's probably because you didn't trust in him or you did something to cause him for him to turn his back upon you based on your behavior. But nobody wants to look at that. Nobody wants to accept that. Or you could be going through the greatest thing out of the three things that I mentioned. And clearly, because I just mentioned two, you could be being chastened. You could be being chastened and brought through the fire that you may be made perfect, that he could accept you as his son or his daughter. Why don't anybody look at any of these scenarios when they're dealing with things in their life? They don't look at any of these scenarios because they don't trust Yahuwah. Do you realize, as the book tells us, that if you can endure chastening, that you shall be accepted as a son? Because what son is not scourged? Do you not know that if you go through the chastening, you will not be able to be a user of the peaceable fruits of righteousness, who all those are exercised thereby are partakers of? You got to sit back and consider that. Because after it's over with, as a Mashiach rose from the dead, you can be able to look at it was worth it. Everything that I encountered, everything that I endured, everything that I did, like the master said before he died, you are ye that were with me in my temptations. Every temptation, every trial, every tribulation, it was worth it for me to go through that and put that work in and grind that out at the end, because I received the fruit of my labor. Therefore, it was worth it. It was worth it. The pain lasted for a little while, but it built character, though. You know what I'm saying? I really do strongly believe not just all people, not just black people, but all people. But mainly, I'm focusing on our people first and foremost. We do not desire the things that bring about building character, because the things that bring about to build character, you're going to have to suffer some shape, form, or fashion to be able to build that character. You know what I'm saying? And when I say suffering, I mean just dealing with some adversity. That's what I mean when I say suffering. Deal with some manner of adversity. Adversity is where a man's mettle is tested. It's where his character is revealed. And you can really see what type of person someone is when they're in an adverse situation. Straight up and down. Pressure busts pipes. It also makes diamonds, rubies, and gemstones. You know what I'm talking about? It does both, but it's also contingent upon what the pressure is being applied to, because those things that are weak bust under pressure and fold, and those things that are strong shine under pressure. And you got to ask yourself, which one are you? Because some of us have seen people, and I ain't talking about just the word. Some of us have seen people who folded under pressure. That folding under pressure was a revealing of their character. Now, whether they learned those things or what they folded under that pressure and strengthened their character, they can only know for the next time they ever put in an adverse situation when they're placed again under pressure. But I can tell you this here, you can't fold under pressure. It just can't happen. You got to be strong. And if you find yourself weak, then you need to get yourself around people who are strong. Folding under pressure ain't good. It shows weakness of heart. And the book tell you, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This is what the text tell you. This is the book of Proverbs. I can't remember the exact chapter and verse at this time, but some of y'all got keyword searches. Search it. He said, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This is why he takes you through adversity and all of these things to see where's your strength at? Where's your faith at? All I'm mentioning this for is because our people are devoid of it. So therefore we're devoid of the power of Elohim. We can no longer continue to operate in that fashion. Deuteronomy 15:6. For Yahuwah Elohim Baruch thee as he promised thee, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, but thou shalt not borrow. Thou shalt reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over thee. And if there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of the gates in thy land, which Yahuwah Elohim give thee, thou shalt not harden thy heart, nor shut thy hand from thy poor brother. But thou shalt open thy hand wide unto him, and thou shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need, and that which he want. Beware that there be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and thy eye be evil against thy poor brother, and thou give him not, and he cry unto Yahuwah against thee, and it be sin unto thee. Thou shalt surely give him, and thy heart shall not be grieved when thou give unto him, because for this thing Yahuwah the Elohim shall baruch thee in all thy works, and in all that thou put thy hand unto. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thy hand wide unto thy brother, to the poor, and to the needy in thy land. And remember how we read in Jeremiah 22, how he said they oppress the poor and needy. He said this is what it is to know me. So when we sit back and we look at what it is to know Yahuwah in regards to that Jeremiah 22, we see it as to have compassion on mercy who those that lack. Knowing that those that lack will always be there. Knowing that you don't have any want in anything that you have. So why is it a problem to you to supply the need of those who lack? Now we can see the strength of Paul's statements in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. They are rooted squarely in the law. That whole statement comes straight from the law. So why do these niggas can't see that all this man was doing was spitting script? They don't know he was spitting script because script is not in them. Let me tell you something. When the word rests in your heart, it's really in you, it spills out into your conversation without you even talking script. Without you saying, oh, because people are going to be able to identify it who know the word because they'll hear it in your conversation. See, these men can't identify Paul's letters because, see, dudes want him to say, just like it says in Deuteronomy, or this like it said here. Nigga, you ought to know it. You got to remember something. Paul was taught at the feet of Gamaliel, a doctor in the law, held in great reputation. That means Paul was an expert in Torah, an expert. And then you take an expert in the law and give him the testimony of Yahusha. That's a dangerous man with that book. I mean, this is a man who's highly skilled. And niggas who only been dealing with the word for a short period of time, you just found out you wasn't a nigga, and you trying to say that you know more than the man who was dealing with the word from birth, who was taught at the feet of a man that is more skilled in the law than anybody we've ever come across, more than likely. Because I can say from my time period of dealing with the word, I ain't ran across that many people. I ain't going to say that many. I ain't ran across nobody who can even equate to the level of skill that the text applies to Gamaliel, myself included. Do you know what I'm saying? I ain't ran across nobody as skilled as Gamaliel since I've been dealing with this here, myself included. So I don't know how these niggas gonna sit back and talk about a man who was taught by somebody who was immensely skilled in the law, and then this man's got the testimony of Yahusha on top of his expert skill in the law. See, a nigga don't want to sit back and look at, there's not a fundamental flaw in Paul's writings. It's a fundamental flaw with you, nigga. The flaw is with you, not with the writings. How about you learn the word better? Nevertheless, back to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. Because I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, because nigga be pissing me off. See, I told the brother too. I say from the minute that I would train to validate everything in the New Testament versus the law and the prophets. That's how I was trained. That's how I was trained. Little Muffin can bear witness to that. I told her that from day one. We talking about way back in 09. I told her that from day one. Anything you find Paul writing, we got to find where he got it from. And if we can't find where he got it from, that means we just don't know at this time. And we're going to wait till Yahuwah see fit to let us know it. And if he don't see fit to let us know it, well, praise be to his mighty and Kadesh name. Period. That's the attitude you're supposed to have. It's not a problem with the text. The problem is with you. You don't understand it. So if you don't understand it, then you ask Yah to give you the understanding for it, and you wait for it. Period. That's how you handle that. You wait for it, and waiting for it can either wait for him to show it to you, or you can ask someone who is more proficient in the word to see if they can answer your query. But the problem ain't with the word. But now y'all can see from verse 13 to chapter 8, well, verse 12 again, that how he say that it is accepted according to a man have, and not according to that he have not. That not other men not that other men be eased and ye be burdened. That's what the law was telling us. That's what Deuteronomy 15 did. You're not being burdened because he blessed you to have the ability to be able to do it. The number one thing, and remember he said your brother, and we know our brothers are those who do the will of Elohim. Of course we know that our people are kinsmen according to the flesh, but your brother is he that do the will of Elohim. You should always, if you know your brother is poor amongst you and he lack and he asks for your assistance and you got it to give, then you ought to give it to him. It's different if everybody doing bad and they can't nobody get nobody nothing. But if you know you ain't doing bad and you got it and you see he had need and you shut your heart up about it and that man cry out to y'all about it, that is a transgression to you because you know you could have done it. But you didn't do it because you were greedy and you were selfish. And we looking at all this because, case in point, we dealing with the law, so we got to have understanding of the law. But we looking at all this to see why Yahushua was so irked at these people selling this stuff in the temple. This is why he was so irked. Because it was Passover. It was Passover. So at Passover, you weren't supposed to be looking to gain increase because Yahuwah would have already had given you increase when you got here. And that you would be coming there to rejoice before him and to disseminate to those who lacked. Not for you to try to come up. Nevertheless, 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 5. Make it verse 3, I suppose. We'll look at verse 1. For as touching the ministering to the Kadeshim, it is superfluous for me to write to you. For I know the forwardness of your mind, for which I boast of you to them of Macedonia, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal hath provoked very many. Yet have I sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this behalf, as I said, you may be ready. Lest happily, if they of Macedonia come with me, and find you unprepared, we, that we say not ye, should not be ashamed in the same confident boasting. Therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren, that they would go before unto you, and make up beforehand your bounty, whereof you had noticed before, that the same might be ready as a matter of bounty, and not as covetousness. But this I say, he which sows sparingly shall reap also sparingly. He which sows bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according as he hath purposed in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly, or of necessity. For Elohim loved a cheerful giver. Elohim is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always have all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. As it is written, he hath dispersed abroad, he hath given to the poor. His righteousness remain forever. Now he that ministers seed to the sower, both minister bread for your food, and multiply your seed sown, and to increase the fruits of your righteousness, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which cause through us thanksgiving to Elohim. For the administration of this service not only supply the want of the Kadeshim, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings unto Elohim. While by the experiment of this ministration they esteem Elohim for your professed subjection unto the Besorah of Mashiach, and for your liberal distribution unto them and unto all men, and by their prayer for you, which long after you for the exceeding grace of Elohim in you. Thanks be to Elohim for this unspeakable gift. Everything that this man just said from this entire chapter take us right back to what we read in Deuteronomy 14, 15, and 16. About administering to the poor of those who are in the body of Mashiach with you. All of that pertains all of that. And this is all springing from those who went outside the camp to go into the tabernacle of the congregation. And what we were sitting back looking at is how Yahushua is that house. But in the midst of going even to get to the point of how Yahushua is that house, which I would pray that all you already knew, we had to take a pit stop and to gain some understanding of why this man was so irked to beat these people during Passover for selling in the temple. Because they were forsaking the poor, they were forsaking the fathers, they were forsaking the needy, they were forsaking the widow, they were forsaking the Levite, and they were forsaking the stranger, and not even looking to distribute to any of these people. And all they were seeking was to exploit and gain these people. Which takes us back to that Jeremiah 22 that we looked at on Wednesday. How they were oppressing the poor and needy. Is this not to know me? Because that's taking us back. If you want to be accepted of Yahuwah, then you have to know Yahuwah. And you have to know that Yahuwah has mercy and compassion on those who lack. So how can you say you know Yahuwah and you don't have mercy and compassion? And see, this is what a lot of brews like to do. See, a lot of brews want to, and don't get me wrong, because I'm not against it. But we talking about his forth is gathering the spiritual cachet with Elohim. So don't get me wrong, because I'm not against it. That is not what I'm about to say. Most of them look like it's a more benefit to them if they feed the poor who are on the street, or clothe the poor that are on the street, or go visit fatherless sons or fatherless daughters who are of the world. But those who be of the household of Elohim, their heart is hard against them. They don't want to feed them when they lack. They don't want to shoot them anything when they lack. They don't want to spend time with or visit fatherless children of people who are Kadeshim. They don't want to do none of that. And they think they're gaining points with Yahuwah by showing mercy to transgressors, yet forsaken they of their own household. And that ain't just, that ain't right. That's not what the law was teaching. Because when he told you to go visit the widows and the fatherless and the poor, he was talking about those who are of your own people. First, he mentioned the stranger as well. If the stranger dwelt within your gates. So if the stranger was within the household of the faith, then you would look out unto them too. Because he said those are without are dogs and sorcerers and all those who love and make a lie. You know what I think about that? It was funny because the gentleman said that to me about the earth being flat. And I'm like, bro, you never heard me say the earth was flat or round. I've never told you anything of the sort. See, our problem with our people, and I told y'all this last week, is we love to argue about some of the most banal, insignificant things that you could ever come up with. But when it comes to things that pertain to righteousness and mercy and judgment and faith, we are immensely quiet. We have no conversation for that. So what we want to understand is what this man was talking about. And I want y'all to get Psalms 112 so you can see one of the places that he quoted. So you can know where that at again in the text. Because you know he tell you that. He said if you lend to the poor, you lend to your maker. Which takes you back to Matthew chapter 25. When the master said, when I was hungry, you fed me. And when I was naked, you clothed me. And when I was in prison, you visited me. And they say, Master, when did we do any of these things? He said, when you did it unto the least of these of my brethren, you did it unto me. So when you do and remember his brethren, those are those that do the will. So when you look out for his people, you did it to him. Therefore, when you give to the poor, you give to your maker. Because you would acknowledge that if Yahushua was without, you would minister unto him. And we'll look at that where somebody did that for him, now that I think about it. Psalms 112. And that is verse, we'll look at about verse 5. It says, a good man show favor. Let's see if we got the word for favor. So the good man show favor. That's what a good man does. That's what a good man does. He shows favor. And the word for favor is kanan. And that's to show pity. To make gracious, to make favorable, or to have mercy on. Say a good man shows mercy. And lend. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in Yahuwah. Did you know what he said? His heart will not be afraid in evil tidings because his heart is fixed. Trusting in Yahuwah. Now when we look at being fixed, it's just kun, and it's simply to be firm, to be stable, to be established, which takes us back to the conversations that we had about being built on that rock. Your faith should be firm. Your mind should be firmly established in trusting Yah. Period. This takes us back to the parable of the sower when he said they don't have no root. So when persecution or tribulation arrives because of the word, by and by they are offended because they have not affixed, they have not established their minds to trust in Yah. See, people only trust in Yah provisionally. As long as he provides certain things, then I'll trust in him. The minute that I don't get the things that I want, then my trust in him begins to fade, and I seek to accomplish my own will. That is not just in the least bit. Remember what Hebrews tell us, that by faith is how your forefathers obtained a good report. I'm going to tell you something, right? We all know that Psalms 37 said, I ain't never seen the righteous forsaken or begging for bread. Ain't never seen it. He told you in the book of Ecclesiastes, he calls the sinner to heap up and give to them that are good before him. You have to remember that. I don't care who it is. Friends, family, strangers, acquaintances. All this here. If you doing y'all's will and you being good, he'll have these people give you whatever you need to get you to wherever you got to go until he opened the floodgates. Because he take a man from a dunghill and set him amongst kings. There's nothing to make for y'all to take a poor man and make him rich. That's absolutely nothing for him to do. That is very insignificant in the grand scheme of things, of all the things that Yahuwah can accomplish, and taking a man who was poor and making him rich. That's nothing to do. Is it anything too hard for Yahuwah? Is that he not told you that? There's nothing impossible with this man. Absolutely nothing. I forgot who I was talking to about if Yahuwah wanted to tell an animal to fart stardust, you guarantee your stardust is coming out his butthole. Do you know what I'm talking about? If he made a donkey talk, he make her do whatever. This man made a man from dirt. So if he can make a man from dirt, there's absolutely nothing that this man cannot do. This man told the stars to appear and they appeared. This man say, let there be light, and light popped up. This man tells the waves, do not go past the sea, and they don't go. They don't go. Think about that. There's absolutely nothing impossible for this man to do. The question is, do you trust in him to do it? He says, his heart is established. He shall not be afraid until he see his desires upon his enemies. He has dispersed, he hath given to the poor, his righteousness endure forever. His horn shall be exalted with honor. The wicked shall see it and be grieved. He shall gnash with his teeth and melt away. The desire of the wicked shall perish. The desire of the wicked is going to hell. But he said that your name will endure forever. His righteousness endure forever. Your faith will endure forever, because faith cannot be destroyed. Because as we will see, y'all willing, before we slide up out of here, that's pertaining to the Ruach HaKodesh, which can never perish because it is eternal. At the end of the day, that's what you should be after. Nevertheless, back to John chapter 2. I know we took a little detour. Hope to y'all that they were beneficial for somebody. But we needed to understand that from looking at these things in the law. To why because we overlooked that it was Passover, and why he would have been upset in the fashion that he was upset, outside of we knowing that that Psalm 69 and Jeremiah chapter 7 are being quoted. But we need to understand, according to the law, what should have been occurring at this feast, which was not occurring. Because if we were in the land and we are obeying, then Yah would give us way more than what we needed in order to give unto those who lacked. That way that those who were given abundance could rejoice in Yahuwah because he had baruched them at such a high level, and those who lacked could baruch in Yahuwah because he ministered to their needs when they had wants. And since I said that, go to Luke chapter 8. Because remember, Mashiach said he had nowhere to lay his head at. So let's see if the same thing had happened unto him with people ministering unto his needs. Luke chapter 8 and verse 1. And also for us to understand that it is meet for us, it is expedient for us, it would behoove us to make sure that we look out for those of the household of the faith. I seen some brothers, right? They were sharing a pic of some dude who's supposed to be a brew who was claiming he was scamming people. Because a lot of brews post a lot of GoFundMe's for a lot of people and and ain't nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people be leery of it because it's internet stuff. Like, we don't know you people. And I seen some brews talking about, oh man, you supposed to be able to help people and this, that, that, and the third. When really people just trying to go about to verify that this person is real and they have need. Because at the end of the day, most of us don't know all of these people on the internet, who these people be sharing this stuff of, that these even real people. Now, of course, most of y'all know the story about the funny looking white boy who mama skanked game niggas out of 55 racks. Whole time talking about he being bullied, and the little bastard, little dog baby around here calling little black children niggas, and they slapped him up about it. Is he a funny looking child? Yeah, he a funny looking child. But clearly they wasn't picking on him because he was a funny looking child. He felt like he could go around and call black people niggas. And that him and his mammy felt like they could go on Good Morning America and shed some crocodile tears and some apologies, and people overlook it. But let's look at the fact. They came up $55,000. And see, that's what people be trying to avoid. Because you don't want to be boo for the fool that done shot some money to a bold-faced liar. Because everybody who say they serve Yahuwah or get themselves a Hebrew name in their profile does not mean that they're just. That don't mean that. You know what I'm saying? Luke 8:1. It came to pass afterwards that he went through every city and village preaching and showing glad tidings of the kingdom of Elohim, and the 12 were with him. Certain women which had been healed of evil ruachs and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others which ministered unto him of their substance. So they served this man with the things that they had. Because remember what we read in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Through his poverty we were made rich. See, let me show y'all something. Proverbs 13 real quick. I used to drop this verse a lot because this verse resonated with me very strongly upon my reading it. Proverbs 13:7. See, there is that make himself rich yet have nothing. There is that make himself poor yet have great riches. Now we know, come on back to John chapter 2. We know Mashiach made himself poor, but yet he had great riches, as we know from 2 Corinthians chapter 8. What were those great riches that he possessed? Well, we know from Proverbs chapter 8, he said he has durable riches in righteousness. He told you, I counsel of you to buy gold and meat tried in the fire, that you might be rich. What are these riches that he possesses? He possesses everlasting life in the name of the living Elohim, Yahuwah of hosts. He possesses the gifts of the Ruach and all of the things that spring from that. You know, the things like joy, the things like shalom, the things like goodness, the things like faith, the things like long suffering, the things like temperance, things like speaking in tongues, the things like the word of wisdom or word of knowledge or a heart of faith. All of these things are the riches of Elohim, of which you cannot quantify in a monetary value. Of which why Peter snapped on the dude for thinking that he could buy the Ruach HaKodesh with money, because it is an invaluable asset of which cannot be purchased. Not with men's money. Same way Psalms 49 tell you, you cannot purchase the redemption of your brother. It took the blood of Mashiach to do it. You were not redeemed from the vain tradition of your fathers with corruptible things like silver and gold, but the precious blood of the Lamb without spot and blemish is what paid for you. So you have to consider that. Because we chase after a lot of things, but we ain't chasing after the Lamb and the true riches. This is why Mashiach said, if you ain't been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, how can he commit to your trust the true riches? We ain't even been faithful with Federal Reserve notes. So he know you're not going to be faithful, because most men will take the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh and seek to be able to make some manner of money from that gift. They're gonna try to get some type of compensation. They want some compensatory dealings from it, whether it be works of the flesh, meaning laying with a woman, because some men do that, or whether it's gifts, or whether it's cars, or whether it's expensive homes, or whether it's just simple cash. This is what people want. So he don't even give it to you. He said a steward must be found faithful. Say everybody want the things of Elohim, but you ain't faithful with it. You have to sit back and look at it. Yahuwah deemed David to be a faithful man. If Yahuwah gives a gift to somebody, this is someone who is faithful in the eyesight of Elohim. And if you're faithful in the eyesight of Elohim, then 9 times out of 10 you'll be despised in the eyesight of men. 9 times out of 10 you're going to be despised in the eyesight of men, because men are not faithful towards Elohim. Therefore they will be jealous and envious of you and despise you in your righteousness, which is of Yahuwah Elohim Bahashem Yahusha, and they're going to hate you for it. And they're going to hate you for it. Because when you're talking about faithfulness, you're talking about someone who is trustworthy, you're talking about somebody who is disciplined, you're talking about somebody who is consistent, and you're talking about somebody who has a joy, a hope, and a love for the living Elohim. Nevertheless, John chapter 2 and verse 13. It ain't even 10 o'clock yet, so we all right, we good. We'll transition smoothly. And the Yahudims' Passover was at hand, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold oxen, sheep, and doves, and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables. And he said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, and make not my father's house a house of merchandise. And the thing that you should have been able to peep if you were paying attention to what we looked at in the law, you will remember that these men knew the law. So they also knew from Deuteronomy 12, 14, and 16, that if you were traveling from a long distance to the place where Yahuwah placed his name to come up for these particular feasts, that you would be able to take the things that he had baruched you with and sell them and turn them into money to come to Jerusalem and buy whatever your soul desired. Remember that if you remember what we read in the law. I pulled a verse for you in chapter 14 if you don't recall. Just to show you how wicked our people can be. And that would be about verse 26 in Deuteronomy 14 with the oxen and the sheep. And you notice that these niggas was in there selling oxen and sheep, because they know that your soul would lust after these things, and they would have them in the temple waiting and ready for you when you got there. Because they knew what was going to be done because of their knowing of the law. And this is an example of them flaunting the law for personal gain. So you have to pay attention to that. There's a reason why they mention oxen and sheep in this particular verse, and all this stuff is taking us right back to the law because they knew this. Verse 17. And his disciples remembered that it was written, the zeal of thine house have eaten me up. Then answered the Yahudim and said unto them, what sign show thou unto us, seeing that thou do these things? Yahushua answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then said the Yahudim, 46 years was this temple in building, wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? But he spake of the temple of his body. When therefore he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this unto them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Yahushua said. So he said he's speaking of the temple of his body, because this is the only thing that could actually contain Yahuwah, is that he wanted to be contained in the body of man. That he wanted to dwell in man. He wanted to Issachar in man. He wanted to dwell in you. That's why he told you to dwell in booths, because he wanted to dwell in you. But the question is, not does Yahuwah want to dwell in you, but do you want Yahuwah to dwell in you? Because Yahuwah's already stated that that is his desire, is to dwell in you. Do you want him to dwell in you? And if you do, then what move will you make to cause him, what move will you make to cleanse your sanctuary out, that it is a suitable place for him to dwell? Because we know Yahuwah cannot dwell in uncleanliness, nor will he dwell in the heart of a faithless and unfaithful man or woman. Nevertheless, 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Five and 1, I suppose. And after that, Revelation 21 and 27, which is probably moot at this particular point, but nevertheless. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of Elohim, a house not made with hands, eternal in Shamahim. Remember how he said he don't dwell in temples made with hands? That's why he said it. Because any building that you can build is made with hands. He wants to dwell in a house that was made without hands. Because the Ruach HaKodesh was not made with man's hands. It is made with the power of the living Elohim, who is blessed forever. You understand what I'm telling you? And this is the place where he wants to dwell. And he wants to take that tabernacle that is made without hands and place it inside of you. You know it tells you that in Hebrews 8, that this is the sanctuary which Yahuwah have pitched and not man. And this is where the grace or the favor or acceptance comes in. This is where all this coming at. You understand? So, and that's what we'll be looking at tonight and y'all willing on tomorrow. It's the difference because it's always a contention and battle about grace and faith. I mean, grace, faith, and the law. And it's not a battle because all three of them go together. But one has a priority over the other. See, once you understand what faith is, then you'll understand what grace is. And once you understand what grace is, then it will cause you to be subject to the law. But you would never exalt the law over grace or exalt the law over faith. Because at that point, you're exalting the written ordinances of Elohim over Elohim himself and his mercy and his compassion. Nevertheless, that's a different conversation. For in this we groan, earnestly desire to be clothed upon with our house, which is from Shamahim. If so be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we that are in this tabernacle do groan, being burdened. Not for that we would be unclothed, but clothed upon, that mortality might be swallowed up of life. See, those of us, remember he told you, all ye that are heavy laden, come unto me, lay down your burdens, I'll give you rest. You know, I think about mortality all the time. Not in the aspect because I have a manner of fear of death, but just thinking about all the people that I know that are gone. And then I just had to sit back and think, like, when a nigga died, niggas like really gone. Like, you really don't see this person ever again. You know what I'm saying? Like, this nigga's not coming back. You can't go have a conversation with this person. This person is gone. It's not like somebody moved from Jacksonville to Los Angeles and you just don't see them and you miss them. You know, you could pick up the phone and call them and talk to them. Maybe even catch a flight out and go see them. Maybe they catch a flight out and come see you. Like, this nigga is gone. Now, of course, most of y'all, even though like this here, right? Okay, in reality, I'm not that old. I'm only 37 years old. But it's a lot of people that I've known in my lifetime and they gone. You know what I'm saying? It's different. Most people, you know, you might know a few people who are gone. Most of them be family. It is a lot of my peers who are gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, straight up, they're gone. You know what I'm saying? Nigga Vincent, gone. The nigga Clarence is gone. Pretty Ricky is gone. Harold is gone. My nigga Kenzo is gone. My nigga Corey is gone. You know what I'm saying? These niggas are dead. The first nigga I ever caught work from is dead. You know what I'm saying? Fat Robert is dead. You know what I'm saying? That junk is bugged. My nigga Damon is dead. My nigga Nick is dead. My nigga Grape 8 is dead. You know what I'm saying? Some of these niggas been dead for a minute. That's not no short period of time. And there's many more. Not to mention any relatives of mine. I'm talking about just peers and friends and my niggas. These niggas are dead. You know what I'm saying? That junk is crazy. Nigga, we not even 50. These niggas gone. These niggas left families behind, kids behind, wives behind. These niggas gone. Some of them didn't even get old enough to be able to do that. My nigga Tony is gone. You know what I'm saying? Nigga killed them, left him dead in the street. You know what I'm saying? And some of these people I mentioned ain't died from no violence. Some of them died from natural causes. Some of them died from car accidents. Like, all these people are gone. Like, straight up and down. And that's just a few, because there's more. Nigga Keith I went to school with is gone. Nigga killed him in Atlanta. Nigga murdered him. My nigga Takaya is gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. That these niggas is gone. We only been out of high school, not even 20 years, and these people are gone. And they ain't coming back. Then when you reiterate the fact of, then they got to meet Yahuwah after this. Like, man, you know what I'm saying? John crazy. You know what I'm saying? And when you in the moment with them, you not thinking about the fact that the time gonna come that they gonna die. You thinking that when we hit 60, 70, a nigga gonna die. You ain't thinking your nigga gonna die at 35. He gonna die at 23. He gonna die at 16. My nigga Harold died at 16. You know what I'm saying? That nigga been gone over 20 years. Junk crazy. You know what I'm saying? You ain't thinking about that. Like, man, this nigga gone for real. Nigga ain't nothing. My nigga Kawan is gone. This nigga been gone for almost 20 years. You know what I'm saying? He's talking about these people I've known since I was 10. Niggas gone. Nigga ain't nothing but a memory on a shirt and some photographs. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't never thinking, dang, this nigga's not gonna be here. So when we understand that our life ain't but a vapor, and you understand that the times that you feeling burdened is because you want that mortality to be covered up with immortality, because you're longing to be with the living Elohim. See, you know, Paul wrote that to live in Mashiach. Matter of fact, that's Philippians chapter 1. Let's just go ahead and pull that. And I ain't trying to make nobody sad or nothing. I'm just telling you this type of stuff I be thinking about from time to time. And I don't feel like, man, these niggas really gone, man. You know what I'm saying? These niggas is really gone. And you just don't think about it. Philippians 1:20. You just don't think about it when you young. That your peers. I ain't talking about your older family members. You know, your mother, your father, your granddaddy, grandma, great grandma, and all that type of stuff. Your peers. Because that's who I've been thinking about, my peers. How many of my peers are gone? And a lot of them did die of violence in some form. My nigga Jeff gone. And I'm mentioning this because I just was thinking about him the other night because I rode where they found his body at. Do you know what I'm saying? All they found was this man's torso. They didn't find his head. They didn't find his arms. They didn't find his legs. Just his torso. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man. All I'm thinking about is, I hope he was dead before they did that to him. Because at least he didn't feel it. I hope they didn't do that to him and he was still alive. This nigga been gone for almost, 15 years. That junk is crazy. He said, according to my earnest expectation and my hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness as always, so now also Mashiach shall be magnified in my body. Listen when he said that Mashiach be magnified in my body, whether it be life or by death. For to me, to live is Mashiach and to die is gain. Now, how is he magnified? Stephen is an example of Mashiach being magnified in your body, even in death. He should be magnified in your body while you living. And that's why I mentioned all of that, thinking about all these people that I know who are no longer here. Mashiach was not magnified in their body, in their life, nor in their deaths. Remember how the book tells you there is no repentance in the grave, nor is there any praise in the grave. You can't get grace and acceptance and favor from Elohim in the grave. You have to get it now while you're here. The only way you could get that is through the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach and faith in his name, that your soul might be preserved. My desire is that whether any of you, Yah forbid, was to die, or if I was to die, that we would have that same hope and confidence that Martha had about Lazarus, to know that I will see him at the resurrection at the last day. Period. Do you know what I'm saying? That you had that confidence to know that. Also, that any one of you should know that if you had the confidence to know that if you died, that a nigga would take your child and treat them as if it was their own. And raise them and love them and care for them and ride for them as if it was their own. For no other reason, because you looked that person in the face and said, that's my brother, that's my sister, I love them and they love me, so therefore I love their child. So if they were to leave this earth, they ain't got nothing to worry about. Clearly they don't, because they're dead. But I'm talking about for the fact that they knowing that my child will be in good hands, whether I'm awake or whether I'm asleep. Because that's what our law teaches to do. If it said look out for the fatherless and the widow, because a fatherless child is not a nigga who ain't got no daddy because they daddy a deadbeat. That's a totally different scenario. A fatherless child is somebody whose father has died. Because you have to look at the culture of what we were into. You didn't have people having babies and niggas dipping. That's a new thing. You know what I'm saying? When I say new thing, I mean in the last maybe last few centuries or so. That was not an Israelite cultural thing. That's not something we did. We didn't make babies and dip. That's a new thing. If you were a fatherless child, it's because your father died. Therefore, the people in the community knew this. So therefore, they look after them. Because they knew the mother was carrying a heavy load because she's a widow now. She doesn't have a provider and a sustainer for her. Her husband is dead. So niggas took up that slack. These niggas ain't gonna try to take up no slack. Nigga ain't gonna do nothing but try to slide in some butt. Instead of just sitting here telling the woman, I'd like to marry you. I'd like for you to be my wife. To do exactly what Boaz did with Ruth. Your husband died. I see you a righteous woman. Even though it don't mention her having no kids. I'd like to be your husband. See, these niggas don't want to do that when they see a woman that's in the word and they find her an acceptable mate. They just want to have sex with her. They thinking with their penis. Versus looking at this woman and say, I would like to provide for you and to protect you and to teach you and to lead you and to guide you and to be your partner through life and we serve Yahuwah together. No, these niggas just thinking about some sex. Or to try to get some points to say, look what I do for this child and you know I do. Wicked niggas, selfish bastards, douchebags all the way around. You know what I'm saying? It's not a genuine actual care for anybody, but just vain esteem that niggas are seeking after. Because they won't honor one from another, not the honor that comes from Elohim only. So, again, Stephen is the example of him being magnified in your death. But how is this man being magnified in your life? Now, we were going to get Revelation 21 to just tell you that, you know, Yahuwah and the Lamb were the temple of it. We no longer need to proceed to that particular passage. Let's dig on into this grace thing. And let's go ahead and let's go back to Exodus 33. Because we at 10:11. It's time to transition. And dealing with him being magnified in life or death, praise Yahuwah, gives us the segue to transition. It's just always things to consider, man. I hope I ain't make nobody sorrowful talking about, you know, people passing away. But I've been thinking about that all week. Probably more than likely because a lot of my peers have been talking about a lot of people who done passed on. I see one of my homegirls just talk about one of our homeboys just died last night. By what means did he pass, I do not know. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. And you know, the longer you live, you know, the more opportunities for that to occur. So I said all that also to say this. If it's people that you care about and y'all not on good terms, you need to go straighten that. You know what I'm talking about? Because the last thing you want to do, it's more to it than just that. The last thing you want to do is to be on bad terms with somebody you love and you care about. You know what I'm saying? If it's people that you love and care about, you shouldn't hesitate to tell them. Not just to tell them to try to assure them that, oh, I love you or that I care about you, but just the fact that they know it. Because you never know if today will be the last day that you hear their voice and see their face. You know what I'm talking about? You definitely need to let your children know that you love them as often as you can. Not only for their own self-worth and value, but also for the fact of you do not know what tomorrow is going to bring. And if you're going to leave this earth. So if you did leave this earth, because I told you, the last words I heard my auntie say was, I love you. Those were the last words that I said to her. If you have the opportunity for that to occur, then be able to make sure that you do that. Sometimes we know that you love people and you care about them and you don't necessarily express that verbally. That person may know that just as well as you know it. But sometimes we take for granted that you could leave here today or tomorrow or next week or next month. And that's just the reality. Because we don't know. The book tell you that. Don't boast in tomorrow because you don't know what it's going to bring. You just don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Most of the people that I mentioned that passed on, they did not know that day was the day that they were going to go to sleep and their thoughts were going to perish. They did not know that. You just don't know. Because you get in that complacent routine or you're doing the same thing every day and you just don't realize that you could leave here. If it's people that you love and care about, and you know what I'm talking about, then you got to make an effort to go see them. Because you just don't know. But most importantly, above all of that, that you got to make sure your soul is right with this man before you leave here. Above all of that, Yahuwah Elohim, Bahashem Yahusha, need to know that you love him. Above all of that, before you leave here. He got to know that before you leave here. And that's all we're trying to impart. Because at the end of the day, everybody like to argue about everything, but we in this to get our souls saved. At the end of the day, this is what we're here for. We're not just here for camaraderie. We're not just here for Joes. You're not just here to try to find a mate. You're not just here to try to have to pass the time. You're not here just to get some. I mean, you are here to get knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, but not just to be getting it for the sake of getting it. You're here for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to deliver your soul from death and the wrath of the living Elohim at his coming. And that's it. At the end of the day, that's the number one priority, is to deliver your soul from death and damnation and the wrath of Elohim at his return. That's all you're here for. That's all you're here for. Because if you can deliver your soul from death and the wrath of the living Elohim, that means you have preserved your soul unto everlasting life and the joy of the paradise of Elohim that he has prepared for all those that love him. See, that's the flip side of that. You're delivering yourself from a consequence in order to receive the reward of the righteous obedience of faith to those whom he has promised this to. He has prepared a kingdom for the poor. He's prepared it for you. Now you've humbled yourself under his hand. Keep yourself humbled under his hand and keep your heart fixed and trusting in him, and he'll bring it to pass in due time. He is faithful in all that he has promised. At that you must know. Nevertheless, Exodus 33 and 13. But see, people won't hear none of that because they don't believe in y'all. So screw them and feed them fish and hope them niggas get diarrhea on top of it. He said, now therefore, make that verse 12, I should say. And Moses said unto Yahuwah, see thou sayest unto me, bring up this people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. Yet thou hast said, I know thee by name, and thou hast also found grace in thy sight. So of course the word for grace is con, and clearly that's favor, acceptance, grace and charm. But mainly it's acceptance. So when you turn around and look at it, for con you get the cot and the noon. So what do you get? A separated seed. A separated seed. So when you see the word grace, your mind needs to transition to think. The same way we seen prisoner. We looked at prisoner last week and we see the prisoner is supported by the head. The head of the man is Mashiach. So Mashiach is your support, which takes us back to the rock. So now we see when we look at grace, grace is really telling us about a separated seed or separated life or separated water. So what is this telling us? It's the Ruach HaKadosh. This is what he was imparting. Now pause. I'm going to show you something, right? Look at Numbers chapter 11. Because this Exodus 33 says that Moses said that he had found grace in his sight and he knew him by name. Now let me show you something real quick and real smooth. Some of the stuff we done hit before, but I want it to really resonate in your mind, you who are willing. So we want Numbers chapter 11. And after Numbers chapter 11, we'll go to John chapter 10. And yeah, I guess I'll work it a little different than I have in time. But praise y'all for the word. Again, I want y'all to keep that in mind. A prisoner is someone, a prisoner of hope, a prisoner of faith is supported by the head, to supported by Elohim. Those who have found grace in the sight of Elohim are a separated seed. You are a separated seed, which makes even more sense when we looked at on Wednesday, and we're going to read again about how he said that seed is separated in Exodus 33. So when we look about abounding in grace, we're looking at abounding in separation. Which is why, and then these statements that Paul makes about grace make a lot more sense when we understand it in Hebrew and what's trying to be imparted. Because in order to be accepted, to be that separated seed, what do you got to have? You got to believe in Mashiach. Which takes you back to faith, to where we see how faith shoots over the law. Because the law did not make you an separated seed. What made Abraham's seed separated? Because he separated himself from his family and left Ur Chaldees, and he believed in Yahuwah, and he counted to him for righteousness. Off of a promise. Off of a promise. He believed in Yah. He said, I'm going to separate him and make his seed as the stars of Shamahim, which cannot be numbered. I'm going to separate him. And when you receive the grace of Elohim, guess what? You become separated. Numbers 11 and where is it at? 27. Actually about 24. Get the whole context of the whole statement of what's going on. Moses went out and told the people the words of Yahuwah, and gathered 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. Yahuwah came down in a cloud and spake unto him, and took of the Ruach that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Ruach rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. But there remained 2 of the men in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the other Medad. And the Ruach rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle, and they prophesied in the camp. Remember, if they were they of them that were written, their names were written in the book of life. And of course, this is what we're looking at pertains to when they say, they don't go with us. Whoever's for us cannot be against us. Which niggas have tried to justify some wicked stuff they had going on. But nevertheless, and there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad do prophecy in the camp. Yahushua the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, My master Moses forbid them. Moses said unto him, Envy thou for my sake? Would Elohim that all Yahuwah's people were prophets, and that Yahuwah would put his Ruach upon them. Now, why did we come to this here? We came to this here to establish that the Ruach of Elohim was upon Moses. That's what we came there for. And we could sit back and look at it and see how Moses was a separated seed. We know he was a separated seed just from the things that transpired with his birth. Of being up in Pharaoh's house. But then even then, as he became a full-grown man, he separated himself from that seed. See, we don't even pay attention to that. When he became a full-grown man, he separated himself from the seed of the Hamite, from the seed of Mizraim, and separated himself and abided alone until Elohim called him to do the work of Elohim. But that's another conversation for another day. But the point of the matter is that when the Ruach of Elohim rests upon you, there has to become a separation. That Ruach can only come from grace. That grace can only come from acceptance. What will cause you to be accepted in the beloved? But faith in Yahushua HaMashiach and the acceptance of his blood of that covenant. That's it. Acceptance of that is Yahushua is what will cause you to be accepted. You cannot be accepted by keeping the law alone. That's what these niggas don't want to deal with. Because it will cause them to actually have to trust in Elohim in good times and in bad. In trials and tribulations. In sufferings and persecutions. Well, you can see that every real man of Elohim in this book who was tested in persecutions and tribulations or sufferings of any kind, Yahuwah did not reject any of them. Who trusted in him in time, because it's easy to say you trust in Yahuwah when everything is peaches and cream and sunshines and rainbows. It's easy to do it. But can you trust in Elohim when you've been sitting in a prison for 13 years? You know what I'm saying? Can you keep trusting in him then? Will your faith hold strong to him then? Can you trust in Elohim at the threat of being thrown in a fiery furnace or a lion's den? Can you trust in Elohim when he tell you to walk naked for a period of time and prophesy unto his people? Will you trust in Elohim when he tell you to go prophesy to a people whose head is hard as a flint stone? You know what I'm saying? Will you trust in Elohim as people come to stone you, yet after you stone and they left you for dead, you get up and go preach twice as hard the next day? Will you trust in Elohim as you are about to be nailed to a tree and pierced in your side, and your hope remains that you know that he will resurrect you on the third day as he told you? Will you endure and trust him all the way unto death? See, that's the question. See, it's real easy to trust somebody when you ain't. This is why a lot of people relationships fail, because it's easy to have a great relationship when everything is smooth, but when things get a little bumpy, most people flee. Most people flee because they don't want to actually sit back and endure anything. Because anything worth having is going to get a little bumpy. It's going to get a little ugly. It's not going to be smooth sailing. And that's when things get tested. That's where you see the character. That's where you see the mettle of the individual. That's where you see it at. That's where you see it at. You have to think about that. If it's ugly for you, will you still trust in Yahuwah? Because everybody trusts in Yahuwah when it's lovely. Oh, I love y'all. You know, y'all the best. Soon as it get ugly, nigga ready to go sin, or they disrespecting this man's name, talking trash, murmuring and complaining, or the first thing a nigga gotta scream is, why me? Why not you? Yahusha didn't scream out and say, why me? Why not you? You want to be made perfect, don't you? You want to be accepted in the beloved, don't you? You want to receive the Ruach HaKodesh, don't you? So why not you? Nevertheless, what's the next place I want to go to pertaining to that? Oh yes, John chapter 10. Stinking phone.
This service is provided in high definition. Free conference call HD.com. Please announce yourself.
Yep, alright y'all. Doggone call drop, man. Yeah. John chapter 10 verse 25. Just something to think about, man. That's if you want to be, if you want praise, if you want to be accepted. You know, some people don't want to be accepted, so you know, it is what it is. John 10:25. Make it John 10 and 22. It ain't gonna hurt, man. You know, a lot of people. You know, a lot of people keeping Hanukkah, Feast of Dedication, whatever they want to call it. You know, we don't really rock with that too tough. Ain't finna ride on nobody who do. It ain't that serious, but something about Hanukkah never really just sat well with me. Whatever niggas want to call it, dedicate, whatever case may be. They read that one verse and John and what we finna read right now and just run with it. So it is what it is. And it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. Because y'all should know from Chronicles, you can look at what was called the Feast of Dedication around the same time as Tabernacles, and 9 times out of 10 what's being called the Feast of Dedication here was probably just Tabernacles. Nevertheless, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Then came the Yahudim round about him and said unto him, How long dost thou make us to doubt? If thou be the Mashiach, tell us plainly. Yahushua answered them, I told you, and you believe not. The works that I do in my Abba's name, they bear witness of me. But you believe not, because you are not of my sheep, as I said unto you. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. My Abba which gave them me is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Abba's hand. I and my Abba are one. And clearly I admit the verse, because this John chapter 10 a little bit further up, when you say, he called his sheep by name, and he leads them out. Now, Exodus 33, it said that Yahuwah knew Moses by name, and he accepted him. Now, we got to ask ourselves a question. What laws did Moses keep to cause Yahuwah to accept him? There were no laws that this man kept. See, let's look at something, right? Let's look at Exodus chapter 2 real quick, and then we'll go to Acts chapter 7. And we're just going to look at something. And after that, we'll go to Romans chapter 4. Let's just look at something real quick. Let's just see if we can get a little bit of understanding on something and consider something. Acts chapter 2 about verse 11. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens. And he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And he went out the second day. Behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smite thou thy fellow? He said, Who made thee a prince and judge over us? Intend thou to kill me as thou killed the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now, we all know that there was no law given to the children of Israel at this particular point in time. They had not received no law. So let's turn around and look at something in Exodus chapter 3 when it pertained to Moses before we go to, dang, what did I just say we were going to do? I'll remember in a minute. Exodus chapter 3, right? Verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb. And the Malachim of Yahuwah appeared unto him in the flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, and looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, while the bush is not burnt. When Yahuwah saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here am I. Notice, he called him by name. He knew him by name. He knew exactly who he was, and he called unto him by name. And he said, Draw not thou hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, from the place where thou standest is Kadesh ground. Now, we all know what he asked him to do. He told him he'd be a spokesman, and Moses told him, I can't talk straight, and this, that, there, and the third. But at the end of the day, Moses was accepted. What did Moses able to do to be accepted? Even in the event that Moses had slayed a man in defense of his brother being oppressed by another man, because surely oppression make a wild man mad, you could say that he committed murder, he committed a sin. That's what some would say. But let's go look at Acts chapter 7, and then we'll go to Romans chapter 4, and we'll see something a little different of why Moses had to go ahead and take little butt out. Take little butt out, send him on back to the dust from which he came. And now, and I want to choose my words very, very carefully. What Moses did in this instance in Exodus chapter 2 is what our people refuse to do in these days and times now when they see their people being accosted by the oppressor. They will sit there and they will watch their brother be murdered, and they will videotape it on their phone or go live on Facebook instead of doing what Moses did and kill this nigga. Do you know what I'm saying? Now, am I advocating anyone killing anybody? Absolutely not. But what I'm advocating is defending your people in the aspect of what your ancestor did. Your ancestor didn't sit there and watch this man beat on his brother and scream, that ain't right. I'm going to put this on Facebook. I'm videotaping you. He didn't do that. I ain't videotaping nothing. I'm going to bust this nigga upside his head. I bet he keep his hands off the next one. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just looking to tell you, just look at the difference of mentality. He sought to protect his brother because he didn't look at his brother any different than him. He seen that we have a mutual oppressor, and I will not stand by and idly watch my brother be beaten watch my brother be killed. I will not do that. And that's my point. That's why I say I had to choose my word carefully. Because, you know, a nigga take that. That nigga telling people to go kill people. No, we're not telling anybody to do anything. What you're telling is to stand up and be an advocate for your brother. Why would you sit there and watch your brother be oppressed and be beaten? And watch it. You know what I'm saying? And watch it. He sat back and looked at it. I'm willing to defend him. Matter of fact, I'm willing to die with him. So we don't have that type of thought process because most of these niggas is out for themselves. Nevertheless, Acts chapter 7, verse 20. In which time Moses was born, he was exceeding fair and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up and nourished him for her own son. Moses was learning all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and in deeds. And when he was a full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Yasharal. You got to understand that. It came in his heart to come visit. This man identified with Egyptian culture. He ain't know nothing else. So you know he ain't had no law. Not the law of Yahuwah, but yet Yahuwah put it in his mind to go see his own people. And after seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how the Elohim by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. And the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do you wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me as thou did the Egyptian yesterday? Notice how he said to set them at one, which is going back to what Mashiach said, Baruch are the peacemakers, for they shall become the sons of Elohim, the children of Elohim. Because he seen two of his own people striving against one another and sought to make shalom. Well, he didn't seek to make shalom when he seen that the oppressor was oppressing his brother. He sought to defend him. And that is my point. And you can defend your brother without actually killing someone, or even actually getting physically violent, unless the situation necessitates such an action. But it's the fact that he had a mind to defend his own people. We don't have a mind to defend each other, nor to set each other back at one, because most niggas are driven by selfish, egotistic desires. You know, it's funny to me because, you know, I see this on the internet a lot. The terms narcissist, sociopath, and psychopath are thrown about very, very loosely. Very few people even sit back and look, because these are actual psychological disorders that you can be diagnosed with. I don't even think most people are aware of the characteristics that one has to possess to even be labeled a narcissist, a psychopath, or a sociopath. You know what I'm saying? For most people who are a sociopath, they have no empathy or care for anybody. A sociopath takes very, very loose risk and care less about consequences. Psychopaths move at a point where they have no desire to be caught. A narcissist is somebody who is self-absorbed and seeks validation from other people and is an attention seeker. You know what I'm saying? Someone who is a narcissist has to be propped up by other people to feel better about themselves. And they have delusions of grandeur that they are better than everyone they come across. But people just love to throw terms out there because they watch a YouTube video, not actually knowing or understanding what these qualities possess. Most of our people sit back. We live in a land that is a narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic place. Because America definitely is an attention seeker who has to be propped up from the validation of others in order to make herself feel better about herself. This is one of the reasons why America constantly says we're the greatest country on the earth. We're the greatest country on the earth. Because you need that attention and you need other people to second that emotion to be able to prop yourself up because you know you're not that great. Not in reality, not in theory. You know you're not that great. You know, you're not in, and we definitely know they're psychopathic and sociopathic. And the Egyptians were no different. They were a narcissistic culture. If you study them and you look at it, they were attention seekers. And they needed validation and self-aggrandizing from other people. But nevertheless, because I don't want to get stuck on that too long. Romans chapter 4. I can also tell you definitely the key point, because in America fits that in the narcissistic profile as well. Definitely one attribute of a narcissist is they are dramaed out. Because see, when you have a constant state of drama, there's a constant state of confusion. When there's a constant state of confusion, you can definitely constantly work manipulation. When you can constantly work manipulation, then you can be able to dictate situations and circumstances to your benefit. And that is the land of where we dwell. Romans 4:1. What shall we say then that Abraham our father as pertaining to the flesh hath found? For Abraham were justified by works, he had whereof to esteem, but not before Elohim. For what saith the scripture? Abraham believed Elohim, and it was counted to him for righteousness. Now to him that work is the reward not reckoned of favor or of grace, but of debt. But to him that work not, but believe on him that justifies the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Even David also described the blessedness of man unto whom Elohim impute righteousness without works, saying, Baruch are they whose iniquities are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Baruch is the man to whom Yahuwah will not impute sin. This is Psalms 32 that he is quoting. And niggas had an issue with this particular passage from Paul. But we can see that Moses was Baruched by Elohim. By what works? Did he manifest? See, look at Romans chapter 2. See, this is what Moses did. Because you got to remember, no Torah was given unto Moses yet. Because he was the one who had to give it. He was the lawgiver. So let's look at something right here in Romans chapter 2, right? In verse 14. Because what we're looking at is Moses defending his brethren. Which him doing that is something that's contained in the law. So let's look and see. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another, in the day when Elohim shall judge the secrets of men by Yahushua HaMashiach according to my gospel. So when we see Moses standing up, because he said he thought that they were understood that Elohim would lead them out by his hand. Him not doing what was written in the law while not having the law was showing how the law was already in his mind. How he was a just and upright man from the jump street. And that he was accepted in Elohim not by works but by the favor of Elohim. And that's it. See, this is what niggas try to eliminate. They want to eliminate that. You can't eliminate that. Nevertheless, let's get to it. John 7:37. Before we even get to John 7:37, let's look back and let's look at Exodus chapter 6 and let's look at about verse 6. I mean Genesis, not Exodus. My apologies. Let's see the first instance of where we see some grace being shown or someone being accepted. Actually, 6 and 6. Yeah, 6 and 6. Yeah. 6 and 6. Make it 6 and 5. Yeah. Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in their rats, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was evil continually. And it repented Yahuwah that he made man on their rats, and it grieved him at his heart. Now remember, because we done dealt with this, we know that the imagination was the inventions or devices of man, and that it was sorrowful to Yahuwah because he would have to kill them. That's why he grieved him at his heart, because he was going to have to kill him. He didn't want to do that. Remember, he take no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, but that you turn yourselves and live. Yahuwah said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the rats, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for repent me that I made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahuwah. These are the generations of Noah, and Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with Elohim. Noah was accepted. Now they say he's an innocent, he's a just man, and he was perfect. So he was complete, he was whole, and he was innocent, and he was blameless. So if he's sitting back and we look at he's a just man, Habakkuk 2 and chapter 2 and verse 2, and then we'll swing to Galatians, we have to sit back and look at what type of work would cause this man to get accepted. Because he said he was a just man. So when we look at just men, we have to understand that every just man shares the same attribute, which manifests the same behavior. Habakkuk 2 and 2. And Yahuwah answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that read it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, the soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. This is how the just will live. This is what the text tells us. Now it said Noah was a just man. So that means Noah lived by the faith. They say he was perfect in his generations. He was complete and upright and innocent and blameless in his generations, which means he lived by his faith and taught his sons to do the same. Because generations are people after him. So when we know that fell on Shem, because we know Japheth and Ham when they did their own thing. Nevertheless, Galatians chapter 3. And then we'll go to John 7:37. Oh yeah, I missed the spot with the calling by name, but we dealt with this before. That calling by name and that ruach resting upon what we was going to get was Lazarus. Because Yahushua called Lazarus out of the grave by name. And what would have put Lazarus back to raise him from the dead? Because it's the Ruach of the Almighty that give you life, or the breath of the Almighty. Because he breathed into man and man became a living soul. That breath returned back into Lazarus, or that Ruach, and that's what caused him to rise, because he called you by name. So the whole aspect of what we're looking at, and that's why I like, because remember, his sister said, I know I'll see him at the resurrection at the last day. He's the separated seed. We also seen that in the parable between him and the rich man. Him resting in Abraham's bosom, or then the separated seed. See, anybody that receives grace or is accepted, because Lazarus is accepted of Elohim, that makes you a separated seed. If you're going to be accepted by Elohim or get the grace of Elohim, you are a separated seed. Bottom line, you got to remember that. That's got to be in your brain. You are a separated seed. Period. Nevertheless, Galatians chapter 3. And not a separated seed because you're an Israelite. Not because you're the seed of Yasharal. Not because you're the seed of Jacob. You're a separated seed because of being accepted in Yahushua HaMashiach. That is what makes you a separated seed. This is why he say not all Yasharal is of Yasharal. We'll just read it off the page. Pray the Lamb for the word. We just read it off the page. Ain't no sense of playing with these niggas, man. I don't care if they mad or not. Who cares? Let's look at Galatians chapter.
No, that's their time being chosen too.
Huh? Yeah, that's anybody, period. That's why he say there's neither Yahudim nor Greek, because what make you the separated seed is your faith in Mashiach. Nationality would have nothing to do with it. Absolutely, it had nothing to do with it. Which we're about to read that right now in Galatians 3 and 6. Even as Abraham believed in Elohim, and it was counted to him for righteousness. Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that Elohim would justify the heathen through faith, preached the gospel unto Abraham, saying, in thee shall all the nations be Baruch. It's there in the law. He said, in thy seed. That seed being Mashiach. That seed is what separates you. Which we about to read it. For as many are the works of the Torah are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continue not in all things which are written in the book of the Torah to do them. That is Deuteronomy 27 and 26. So this is the thing where we look at it why we don't boast in the law, but boast in Mashiach. Because if you boast in the law, you're going to hell if you don't do everything that's written in there. Because there's no place for you to be accepted at this point. Not that it makes the law null and void, but that no man is justified by the Torah in the sight of Elohim. It is evident for the just shall live by faith. We just read that. So niggas saying, oh, he putting the law against faith. This man has just quoted the law and the prophets in his words. Period. That's what he's just done. He has actually quoted the law. In verse 6, he quoted Genesis 15. In verse 8, he quoted Genesis chapter 12. In verse 10, he quoted Deuteronomy 27 and the prophet Jeremiah, because he told you, cursed is everyone that do not obey this covenant in the 11th chapter. So he has actually quoted 1, 2, 3, 4 verses. And then when he comes with the just to live by faith, what we just read in Habakkuk, this man done quoted 5 places out the Old Testament in a short manner of words. And niggas trying to disrespect what this man talking about. He just hit you. He just spilled nothing but script out his mouth. Or out his pen, I should say. Nothing but script. And he finna keep on doing it. And the Torah is not a faith, but the man that do them shall live in them. Now he done hit you with Leviticus 18 like we read on Wednesday. Now he done hit you with 6. Because the law was not given by faith. Mashiach have redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed be he, cursed is everyone that hangeth on the tree. Now he done hit you with 7. So we talking about from verse 6 to verse 13, this man done quoted 7 places out the Torah and the Tanakh, just that quick. All of them to explain to you that you justified by faith in Elohim, by faith in his son. 7 scripts, just that fast. When all of them are pretty plain that he quoting script. You ain't even got to be that skilled in the law and prophets to even know he was quoting script and everything he just said. That the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Yahushua HaMashiach, that we might receive the promise of the Ruach through faith. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannul or add therein. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Mashiach. Now, if we was to look in Isaiah 59 and 20, which we're not going to pull, it says, the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and all those who turn from transgression in Jacob. And this is the covenant that I shall make with you. The Ruach that I put upon you, and the word that I put in your mouth, shall be upon thy seed, and thy seed seed, and thy seed seed, from henceforth and forever. Isaiah 59 and 20 is letting you know about a separated seed. That separated seed is coming because they're coming to the Redeemer, the one who has purchased them. The one who has purchased them is what is causing them to be accepted. What is causing you to be accepted is grace. And what is allowing you to be delivered from death is the grace in Elohim. Now let's look at that in John 7:37. But before we look at John 7:37, let's look at Luke 6 and 26. We'll make it 6 and 22. The day following, when the people which stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was none other boat there, save the one wherewith his disciples were entered, and that Yahushua went not with his disciples into the boat, but that his disciples were gone away alone, howbeit there came other boats from Tiberias, nigh unto the place wherein they did eat bread, and after that the master had given thanks. And when the people therefore saw that Yahushua was not there, neither his disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum, seeking Yahushua. And when they found him on the other side, of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, when come thou hither? Yahushua answered them and said, Truly, truly, I say unto you, you seek me not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat loaves and were filled. Labor not for the meat which perish, but for the meat which endure unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him have Elohim the Abba sealed. Then said they unto him, What shall we do that we might work the works of Elohim. If you remember what the master said in John chapter 8 to the Yahudim, he said, if you were the children of Abraham, you would do the works of Abraham. Now look at the thing that he just stated. They said unto him, what shall we do that we might work the works of Elohim? Yahushua answered and said unto them, this is the work of Elohim, that you believe on him whom he hath sent. Isn't that something? Now this is Mashiach. This Yahushua talking. It seems to me that Yahushua words line up with exactly what Galatians said. That it's not by the works of the Torah, but by the work of Elohim, which is the working of faith. He said the work of Elohim is to believe on him whom he has sent. But let's see if we can find a passage in the Tanakh that would back that up, because you know we always have a smarty art nigga that'll say that's New Testament only. Psalm 78. So the work of Elohim is to believe on him whom he has sent. And you would have worked the work of Elohim at that point. The work of Elohim at that point would cause you to repent. Because is Mashiach the minister of sin, or the servant of sin, or the teacher of sin? Elohim forbid. See, niggas take that when you preach that. I remember niggas say, yeah, boy, when I first seen you, I thought you was a Christian. Of course, because I'm not teaching the Hebrew-centric, law-centric doctrine that your salvation is contingent and dependent on you keeping this man law, statutes, and commandments. Your salvation is dependent upon your faith in Elohim, which would provoke you, which would cause you to live by his commandments, because you have hope and trust in his promise. So quite naturally, you would meet his standard. One thing I've noticed in my entire lifetime, the higher your standards are, the smaller your options are. As far as it comes down to choosing a mate or choosing friends or the amount of people that stay around you. Because your options dwell up when you lift your standards higher. Which only takes us back to when Mashiach was lifted up upon the stake and they told him to come down from the stake. Which takes us back to Nehemiah when they said come down, and he said, I have a work to do. I can't come down to you, baby. You got to come up here. See, our problem is that we will lower our standards for people we have no business lowering them for, instead of keeping our standards high. And when I'm talking about standards, I ain't talking about worldly standards. I'm talking about standards in Elohim. Because your Elohim sits in Shamahim. And your eyes are supposed to be fixed on Shamahim. So therefore your standards should be in Shamahim. Because as in earth as it is in Shamahim. So therefore your standard should be a heavenly standard, a Kadesh standard, a godly standard. Therefore anyone who approach unto you ought to meet that standard. And if you were to lower your standard to an earthly standard, then how is your trust and hope even in Elohim to begin with? Because at that point you ain't following the text. Nehemiah said, I ain't coming off this wall, nigga. You got to come up to me. I'm doing a great work. I can't come down to you. I'm not coming down to you. You got to come up to meet me. And at the end of the day, everybody ain't willing to come up to meet Elohim and Shamahim, because they ain't willing to do the work of Elohim, which is to believe on him whom he hath sent. Therefore, you will live a Kadesh and clean, sanctified lifestyle, because you are the separated seed. This is one of the reasons why the text tell you not to mingle your seed with the heathen, because they're not a separated seed. So why would you be unequally yoked with an unbeliever? They're not a separated seed. You polluting the Kadesh seed at that point. Think about that. We'll be polluting the Kadesh seed at that point. That's male or female. You're going to be polluting the Kadesh seed at that point. Because you done came off the wall from doing the great work to Lord and to mingle yourself with the people of the land. We know how y'all felt about us mingling ourselves with the people of the land. Psalm 78 and 5. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a Torah in Yasharal, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in Elohim, and forget not the works of Elohim, but keep his commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, that set not their heart aright, whose Ruach was not steadfast with Elohim. Notice that he said it was to be told to the children that their hope might be in Elohim. So notice that he was telling you, and we notice in the law, Exodus 12, he was telling you to tell them about the miracles that they might believe in Elohim. Because they wouldn't believe in Elohim strictly off of thou shalt not eat that which part of the hoof and is cloven footed, but don't eat the cud. That ain't gonna cause you to believe in Elohim. If a nigga think you gonna believe in Elohim because you tell him to eat pork, you have literally seen a spiritual idiot. You think you're gonna believe in Elohim because he tell you not to commit fornication? You think you're gonna put your trust in Elohim because he tell you not to commit adultery? You know how many niggas keep the Shabbat every week and don't believe in Elohim? You see them because these niggas fall off to the wayside. So that wasn't put. But if you can hear a story about, yeah, he killed all the firstborn in Egypt. Yeah, he made it go dark for 3 days, nigga. But we had light, though. Yeah, man. All the kings of the Amorites. Yeah, he murked all of them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we were going through the wilderness, man. We ain't had no water. We were complaining like some real hoes. You know what he did, man? That man made water come out of rock. No lie, man. We was complaining about food like some real suckers. This man rained down angels' food, man. That's what we ate. Gave us twice on the 6th day. And he that needed much didn't lack, and he that had little had enough. I promise to you, man. I seen it. My great-great-granddaddy told me this story. It's in the text and my people patted it down. Yeah, man, he sent locusts and all on these niggas, man. Yeah, man, Moses made a staff turn to a snake, man. Illest thing you ever want to see. Boy, he drowned Pharaoh's whole army in the Red Sea. That would cause you to set your hope and your trust in a man because you would know what type of man you were dealing with. You would know that he was faithful and just who promised, and you wouldn't waver in your profession of faith in him. You would have an anchor to have you deeply rooted. That law's not going to produce that. I don't care what now niggas say. I contend with any nigga across this whole world on that matter. Any day of the week, anytime. I don't care who it is. Because you a lie from hell if you think that's going to cause somebody to believe in Yahuwah. Because I ain't seen it yet. I ain't seen it with my own 2 eyes. Anybody who had a trust and hope in Yahuwah based off some instructions. I ain't seen it. Show me a nigga who got hope in Yahuwah based off of instructions. I'll show you people who got hope in Yahuwah based off of promises and the manifestation of his power and character. I can see people who trust him off of that. Nevertheless, I think our point has been proven. John chapter 7 verse 37. But I ain't done yet though. It's 11:02. Give me about 10 more minutes. I'll let y'all slide. I promise I will. We can go too long. We got more. I know I got on tomorrow too. We had to ease our way to start that great portion to cause us of what it's going to cause us to be accepted. Because we need to call it John 7:37. We need to know what's going to cause us to be accepted. This when we get accepted. Because y'all willing by the time we get finished with this, grace should be an easily understood scriptural concept for all of us. To where we will not look at it in any fashion the way we have looked at it previously. But we will understand that grace is what causes us to be a separated seed. Period. And that separated seed, and if Mashiach, and if that seed is Mashiach, and he said that he came to cause a separation, that he didn't claim to bring shalom, but a sword to set a man at variance, then we looking at that we supposed to be accepted into him, which takes us back to the blood of the covenant that he say, for my prisoners of hope, and he will render unto you double, because what caused you to be able to become that separated seed was the blood of the covenant, because you were supported by the head in your faith. Your faith is what caused you to receive grace, which caused you to be accepted, which caused you to be the separated seed, because you've received the Ruach HaKodesh, which makes you a son or a daughter of the living Elohim. And the living Elohim rests in you, and you rest in him, and therefore you are no longer a debtor to serve the flesh, but that you live in the Ruach, and that your Ruach bear witness that you are a son and daughter of the living Elohim, and because you are willing to suffer with him, you will reign with him, and you will sit at his right hand, and you will bask and esteem in his kingdom forever. Bottom line, that's the objective. That's what you're here for. You ain't here for nothing else. If you ain't here for that, you need to go ahead and pack it up. John 7:37. In the last day, that great day of the feast, Yahushua stood and cried, saying, if any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believe on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Ruach, which they that believe on him should receive. For the Ruach HaKodesh was not yet given, because that Yahushua was not yet esteemed. Now, I know I've told y'all this before, and you who are willing, we'll finish it out before the week, for the Shabbat is over with. You cannot receive the Ruach HaKodesh by the hearing of the law. It can only be received by the hearing of faith. This is the whole reason why Paul was saying the things that he was saying. Because these idiotic, stupid, fool niggas then ain't no different than these idiotic, fool niggas now. Niggas is idiots. Niggas is dumb. Niggas been studying the script for 25 years and still stupid. Today can't understand that the precious gift of the Ruach HaKodesh cannot be given unless you believe on him whom he has sent, which takes you back to Deuteronomy 18, which takes us back to what we were just looking at in John chapter 6, that you would work the works of Elohim. And the work of Elohim is to believe on him whom he has sent. And you cannot believe on him whom he has sent unless you execute Deuteronomy 6 and 4. And you can't execute Deuteronomy 6 and 4 unless you hear the word and believe it with the intent to do it, which takes us right back to Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 4, that the just will live by their faith, because they heard the word, therefore they believed the word, and that caused them to obey the word. Bottom line, which will take us right back to what I was mentioning, what Nehemiah did, of which the law tells us repeatedly to not lower the godly standard. To not lower the godly standard. Nobody is worth lowering. Matter of fact, Ezra chapter 9. I'm going to have to apologize because I don't think we're going to make these 10 minutes. I rescind my previous statement. We're not going to make it. Not to hit this Ezra 9. Y'all got to hear that before we depart from here. I was finna round that out. But then Ezra just came into my brain. So, yeah. We're going to look at that. Ezra 9 and 5. 9 and 5. And at the evening sacrifice I rose up from my heaviness, having rent my garment and my mantle, and I fell upon my knees and spread out my hands unto Yahuwah my Elohim. And I said, O my Elohim, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee. My Elohim, for our iniquities are increased over our head, and our trespasses is grown up unto Shamahim. Since the days of our fathers have we been in great trespass unto this day. And for our iniquities have we, our kings, and our priests, been delivered into the hand of the kings of the land, to the sword, to captivity, and to a spoil, and to confusion of face, as it is this day. And now for a little space grace has been showed from Yahuwah Elohim, to leave us a remnant to escape, and to give us a nail in this Kadesh place, that our Elohim may lighten our eyes, and give us a little reviving in our bondage. For we were bondmen, yet our Elohim have not forsaken us in our bondage, but have extended mercy unto us in the sight of the kings of Persia, to give us a reviving, to set up the house of our Elohim, and to repair the desolations thereof, and to give us a wall in Yehuda and Jerusalem. And look what he said. And now, O Elohim, what shall we say after this? We have forsaken thy commandments, which thou hast commanded us by thy servants the prophets, saying, the land which you go to possess is an unclean land, with the filthiness of the people of the lands, with their abominations, which have filled it from one end to another with their uncleanliness. And now we're not going to read all this, but what did all the people do? They went back and joined in affinity with the people of the land. So even when some manner of grace was shown, they went back and sinned. Let's look at Romans chapter 6 and verse 1. And to make this statement that Paul makes a little different. Because Yahuwah calls the Persians to accept, to let Yasharal go, to freedom from the bondage. So now you've been freed for your bondage and you seek to return to your bondage. Why? Why do that? After we read Romans 6, we'll go to Galatians and we'll call it a night. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Elohim forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin any live any longer therein? Notice how he said that he gave us a nail in a Kadesh place to give us a little reviving, because we were dead in our trespasses and sins, like we read in Ephesians on Wednesday. Now you've been quickened. See, he brought them out of captivity, out of sin, and out of death in a spiritual aspect, And when you're looking at the book of Ezra, he extended them favor when they didn't need any favor to be extended. He accepted them when he did not have to accept them. And what did they go do? They went in sin. And they went and lowered the godly standard because they wanted a husband or a wife, or because they had an itch in their britches. So they lowered the godly standard. After you had been delivered, you lowered the godly standard for selfish motivation, for carnal gratification. When you need to keep in mind that if you're going to strive to be that separated seed, of course, we didn't read that in Ezra where he talked about that. They mingled the Kadesh seed and pollute that seed. You're not going to pollute it with sin because you're going to keep that seed separated. And I ain't talking about keeping it separated in the forth of marrying someone who is not of the house of Yasharal. Oh, we got to hit Romans 9 too because that was in my head earlier. No, that's not why you're going to keep it separated. You're going to keep it separated because your Elohim is a clean Elohim. He is a just Elohim. He is a separate. This is why we say Ruach HaKodesh and always constantly forget that it is the set apart spirit. It is the spirit of separation, or the breath of separation, or the set apart breath, because it is the essence of Elohim, and he is set apart. So if you're going to be of that seed, you got to be set apart. And you have to keep in an instance that when he made the promise that he said, in your seed, all the nations of earth will be blessed. He told Abraham to separate himself, showing you the framework of being accepted by grace in the law. He was already showing you that. Know ye not that as many of us were immersed in the Yahushua HaMashiach, we are immersed in his death. We don't even need all that no more. Verily, verse 1 and 2. Verse 1 was all that we needed. Yah willing, we'll come back to it. So we know that grace, and of course we'll hit Galatians 2 after a while, but we know grace is acceptance. What caused you to be accepted? It was the body of Mashiach is what caused you to be accepted. It's faith is what causes you to. It was the faith of Elohim. It was the faith, it was the faith of Yahushua HaMashiach that caused him to be accepted by Elohim. Therefore, we can all be accepted by Elohim by means of the faith which he exhibited. See, if most of them look at, Mashiach kept the law, we got to follow that. But they never want to look at the fact that he kept the faith. He never lost his faith in his Elohim. Move. Galatians chapter 5, I want to. And then we'll stop at Romans 9. Make sure that's what I want. That is not it. That is not it. Could that be Ephesians that I require? I don't think that's Ephesians that I require. Dang, I can't recall. Where is it at? Where does it be? I got the words in my head. They about to come out my mouth. But I would prefer that y'all read that to see that for yourself. And if I can't pull that out at this particular time. Oh, there we go. It's the third chapter and not 3 and 1. Listen what he tell you. O foolish Galatians, who have bewitched you, that you should not obey the truth, but whose eyes Yahushua HaMashiach have been evidently set forth crucified among you. This only what I learn of you. Received you the Ruach by the works of the Torah, or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish, having begun in the Ruach, are you now made perfect by the flesh? Have you suffered so many things in vain, if it be yet in vain? And you were willing. That is the next aspect of grace that we will continue, because we've planted that seed tonight, and you who are willing on the morrow, we will continue it. When we look at Moses received the Ruach, as that's why we took that direction to look at that, by hearing of faith, as did Yahushua, which Yah willing, we'll look at that in more in depth on the morrow. So, and we will look at other men who received the Ruach. They received it by faith and not by the works of the law. Because we have to justify the statement that we read in John 7:37. through 39. That is to receive by all those that believe on his name. We looked at it a little bit in Psalm 78 with that John chapter 6, that the works of Elohim is believing on him whom he has sent. But we have to see how that blessedness comes upon us by the hearing of faith and not the works by the law, to fully understand what being accepted and beloved is. Romans 9, and that's it. I went about 2 to 3 minutes over what I wanted to do, so we didn't go too far. Romans 9:6. Not as though the word of Elohim have taken none effect, for they are not all Yasharal which are of Yasharal, neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of Elohim, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. The children of the promise are counted for the seed. The seed is Mashiach, which is the promise, which is of faith, which causes grace, which causes you to be accepted, which brings forth Khan, which brings forth the Kat in the noon, or the separated seed. So Yahuwah willing, on the morrow when we look at grace, we'll be looking at that separation of seed, which comes through the faith of Mashiach. So with that being said, hallelujah for Yahushua and the word. And we will stop right there.